Revealed, the sinister truth behind my family's terrifying abduction, a cursed childhood uncovered. Sarah stood at the threshold of her family home, heart pounding like a war drum. The house loomed, draped in shadows that stretched menacingly across the overgrown yard. The paint was peeling, like the skin of something long dead. Everything felt wrong. The vibrant laughter of family dinners echoed only in the recesses of her mind, replaced now by an oppressive silence that seemed to swallow the world whole. With each creak of the door as she entered, it felt as if she were unearthing something even darker than her mother's grave. Her chest tightened as she crossed the threshold. Memories flooded back. Balloons, cake, and warmth that had once filled these walls were now oppressive and chilling. The empty rooms stared back at her, their corners dark and whispering. Every step felt like an intrusion. Had she forgotten what lay beneath the surface of this home? Something sinister waited, lurking just behind the fabric of her nostalgia. Climbing the ladder to the attic, the air grew heavy with dust and decay. There, among boxes of forgotten toys and brittle photo albums, she found a dusty old tape recorder, inscribed with her mother's delicate handwriting. For the stories we share. With trembling hands, Sarah pressed play. The room filled with the crackling sound of her mother's voice, followed by eerie laughter that sent shivers dancing down her spine. But then the laughter faded, replaced by something dark, and the horror unfolded. Stories of betrayal, fear, and ultimately, the unsolved disappearance of her family. At first, she wanted to dismiss the chilling accounts. Childhood imagination, right? But as she listened, the hair on the back of her neck stood on end. The name of the cop who'd vanished intertwined with these shadows haunted her every thought. A man once celebrated, now a ghost, slipping through the cracks of her memory. She couldn't shake the feeling of his eyes on her, watching, waiting. Something about this all felt too close, too intertwined with her community and neighborhood, where smiles turned to grimaces at the mention of the past. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the days blended into nights, an unsettling energy settled around Sarah. Whispers danced just beyond her hearing, shadows lurked outside her windows during the pale moonlight, darting away as she turned to look. Panic clawed at her heart, but when she tried to speak to neighbors and friends about her fears, they turned away, their eyes downcast, avoiding her gaze as if the very mentioning of her family's past risked unveiling something unforgivable. Her pleas were met with silence, fueled only by the glare of dismissiveness. She felt alone. Unraveling the tangled threads of buried memories, she began piecing together the distorted truth. Each midnight delve unveiled more horrors, but the only thing she clearly understood was that whatever had taken her family had not just gone away with the years. Now, as the darkened corners of the house grew more sinister, she faced a horrifying realization. She was being watched not by a specter from her childhood, but perhaps by someone she had trusted the most. Her pulse raced as she turned, the air thick with dread. And there he stood, the same face that had once soothed her as a child, now twisted into something terrifying. "You never did understand the lengths one must go to keep family safe," he said, the hollow echo of cheer leading to dirge. She was trapped between the urge to scream and the entrapment of family loyalty, now laced with a chilling dread. What lay beneath the familiar bonds in this cursed neighborhood? Would she break the silence, or would it consume her whole? Sarah's breath caught in her throat, the familiar voice now a rasping whisper. She took a step back, her heels pressing against the attic's worn wooden planks. The shadows shifted around her, extending like dark, clawed fingers. She fought between disbelief and the creeping terror coiling her stomach tighter and tighter. "What do you mean?" she choked out, gripping the edge of the dusty table for support. Every instinct screamed to flee, but the haunting gaze of the man she once adored turned her muscles to stone. His eyes, once warm and inviting, now glimmered with something more sinister, a predatory hunger. "You've stirred up old dust, Sarah. It was meant to remain buried. His smile, malicious and grotesque, sent a cold sweat racing down her spine. Family bonds are more potent than you realize. They demand protection. The thick air seemed to vibrate with unspoken threats. She felt the walls of the attic constricting, as if the very house was alive, locking her in a wretched embrace. The fading light through the small attic window painted his features in sharp relief, and with it, the familiarity became unbearable. This was her father, her protector, now twisted in a web of dark intentions. "Why would you keep this from me? Why would you let me?" She couldn't finish, the sense of betrayal tightening around her heart like a vice. All those evenings spent in his comforting presence, the stories he told, were they just lies wrapped in kindness? Because you weren't ready to hear the truth. He stepped closer, the creaking floorboards wailing beneath him. You wanted to remember them as they once were, not what they have become. Each word dripped with hidden meanings, sending shudders through her limbs. What did you do to them? Silence wrapped around her, heavy and suffocating. She could see those dim corners of the attic, where the darkness moved with a life of its own. Her breath became shallow as a thought flickered in her mind. What if the shadows were more than just dark? What if they were the remnants of those she'd lost? You don't need to know, he hissed, eyes narrowing dangerously. Some truths are better left unspoken. They haunt the living, especially when blood is involved. With a desperate surge of adrenaline, Sarah shook her head, pulling away from the weight of his chilling words. I have to know! Each syllable surged with a resolve born of fear. What happened? You owe me that much! His eyes flickered with a mix of fear and anger, and in that moment she saw a glimpse of the father she once knew. But it was fleeting, a ghost that vanished as quickly as it appeared. You'll regret this, Sarah. Knowledge brings pain, and pain demands sacrifices. The shadows lunged forward. She whirled around, her heart hammering, nearly colliding with the attic door. She had to escape. What had she awoken? Sarah! He called, the authority in his voice tinged with desperation. Don't run. You might just trade one nightmare for another. The attic door slammed shut behind her before she could reach it, trapping her in the depths of the tragic revelation. She was not alone. From the darkness, whispering voices began to surface, cold and ghostly, echoing her mother's old bedtime stories spun with nightmares. Each word pulled her closer to a horrifying truth she had yet to uncover. Would she scream, or would she listen? As the figures from her past materialized in the shadows, she realized one terrifying thing. She was in the heart of a web woven from blood, betrayal, and a past that wanted to reclaim her. Daddy, she whispered, caught between terror and longing, but it was too late. The true horror awaited her, ready to reveal a twisted legacy she might never escape. Was she really ready to face what lay hidden within her family's darkness? The shadows pressed in, nothing but whispers of what was yet to come. The light faded from the attic, swallowed by the encroaching darkness. Sarah's heart pounded like a war drum. The shadows coalesced and began to take shape, murmurs swelling around her, a chorus of lost souls, trapped in anguish. The voices twisted, blending into a single mournful cry. Panic bubbled in her throat. Memories flickered like faulty bulbs in her mind. Her mother's soft touch, the warmth of her laughter, and then nothing. Sarah came the whispers, familiar yet foreign, echoing through the oppressive gloom. It was as though the walls themselves had come alive, each crack and crevice pulsing with the weight of her family's hidden horrors. She clenched her fists, uncertainty gnawing at her bravery. What do you want from me? The words slipped out, trembling but defiant. The air turned frigid, and the figure of her father blurred in and out of focus, like a mirage slipping away whenever she reached for it. Your fate, my dear. You were meant to carry the burden. His voice, once solid as a rock, now felt spectral, and she recoiled, stepping backwards until she hit the cold wooden wall. You've meddled with forces that should have been left undisturbed. Bloodlines demand more than love, they require sacrifice. The darkness thickened, wrapping around her like a suffocating blanket. Memories of laughter turned to screams, visions of happiness twisted into grotesque, wrenching despair. She struggled against the rising tide of terror. Her father's shadow loomed large, flickering ominously as he stepped forward, his face unreadable in the dim light. "No!" she shouted, unable to determine if she was crying out to him or herself. "I will not be a pawn in this game." "Then you doom yourself, my child." His voice dropped to a low hiss like the wind through a cracked window. "Your mother's fate lies within you, entwined with their shadows. The roots grow deep." Suddenly, the attic filled with an unseen fog, thick and choking. She turned again, seeking escape, but the attic door remained a solid barrier. Shadows danced at the corners of her vision, squirming and writhing, as voices grew louder, furious and pleading. "Please listen to us." They clawed at her from the depths, their words blending into a single, incessant plea. "You must understand." "What do you mean?" she screamed, each breath tearing at her lungs. The temperature seemed to plunge further, the atmosphere crackling with unnameable energy. "Find the box." The chorus halted in an eerie stillness. "In the cellar the box will reveal all." A flicker of determination ignited in her chest. The cellar. She had always been warned to avoid it. But the question clung to her thoughts like poison. What truth lay buried down there? "Sarah, don't be foolish." The desperation in her father's voice cut through her daze. "You're playing with fire. Do not disturb what lies below." Ignoring him, she pressed her back against the rough wall, the wood splintering at her touch. She scanned the attic, searching for anything that could lead her to the way out. The whispers intensified, imploring her to trust them. "It's your only chance to break the curse." With a rush of adrenaline, she bolted towards the stairs she had avoided earlier. Her feet pounded upon the time-worn stairs leading down, each step echoing like a funeral march. But as she neared the threshold of the cellar door, a blinding darkness pulsed with malevolent intent. Something stopped her, cold, a force unlike anything she had ever felt, pushing against her will. "Sarah!" Her father's voice thundered through the void. "You will not leave this house with that knowledge." As she grasped the cold iron handle of the cellar door, it trembled with power. She hesitated, hit with a wave of doubt. What would she unleash if she opened that door? Something was waiting. Was she ready to throw herself into the abyss, where the past breathed life into inseparable horrors? With trembling hands she turned the handle, heart racing as shadows raced to consume her. And the whispers grew louder, erupting into a cacophony of betrayal and forgotten promises. What waited on the other side, behind the door, could change everything. She was if it didn't destroy her first. The cellar door creaked open, releasing a gust of damp, musty air that clawed at her face. Sarah fought back the urge to gag. The shadows twisted eagerly, waiting for her to step over the threshold, and she felt their hungry breath brushing against her skin. She hesitated again, her father's visage burned into her mind. "You're playing with fire, Sarah." It echoed like a warning bell. But the whispers skittered to life, flitting around her ears like moths drawn to a flame. "You must know," one voice pleaded, laced with desperation. Taking a deep breath, she stepped into the darkness, the air growing thicker, more suffocating. The smells of mildew and decay wrapped around her, igniting her fear. She was going deeper into the heart of her family's secrets, a realm where shadows thrived. The light, once offering her comfort, faded behind her like a dying ember. As her feet touched the cold, uneven stones of the cellar floor, she squinted into the inky blackness. Every instinct screamed for her to turn back, to escape before the malevolence seized her. But the promise of the box drove her forward, compelling her against her better judgment. "Find the truth," the voices urged, swirling around her like a tempest. Searching the dimly lit expanse, she carefully maneuvered past rotting wooden crates and rusted tools that hung like broken promises in the air. Each step deeper felt like a descending weight swallowed whole by the house's untold horrors. Then, as if responding to her determination, a faint glimmer caught her eye, a polished edge poking from beneath a pile of discarded tarps. Heart racing, she hurried toward it, her hands trembling with anticipation. When she pulled the tarp aside, her breath caught in her throat. A beautifully crafted wooden box lay half buried, its surface etched with intricate designs that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. "This is it, the truth," she whispered, almost reverently. A sense of power radiated from the box, the kind that made the hair on the back of her neck stand straight. Just as her fingers grazed its smooth surface, the whispers turned shrill, thrumming with urgency. Don't! You don't know what it can do! Sarah froze, a chill running through her bones. The very shadows around her ignited with rage. They hissed and snarled, sharp sounds ricocheting through the cellar, as if the darkness itself opposed her. Enough! She shouted, her voice a mixture of panic and defiance. I want to know! With that, she flung the box open, splintered wood quaking against her grip. Light burst forth, brighter than she could bear, blinding her, filling the cellar with an overwhelming glow. Sarah! The cries erupted from every corner, her father's voice scrambling over the chaos. You were warned! She staggered backward as shadows exploded, swirling into monstrous shapes, twisting and folding into one another. Fear clawed at her chest, but the light called to her, an invitation drenched in forbidden promises. What had she unleashed? The voices crescendoed until they merged into a single, thunderous roar, vibrating through her very soul. You must choose! They screamed. Your family's fate hangs in the balance. Heart pounding, she shielded her eyes from the light. The room spun, and memories both beautiful and horrifying flooded her mind. Memories of laughter, screams, and darkness. All entwined with the curse that I and the swirling chaos. One thought pierced through the tumult. To break the cycle of horror, she might have to confront the truth her family had buried. The world around her began to tremble, the ground shifting beneath her feet as the shadows charged forward, forming a monstrous wall. Sarah! It echoed again. Choose! A breath caught in her throat, and darkness clawed at her. Did she dare confront her past? The answer sat heavy in the air as the radiant light flickered like a candle on the verge of snuffing out. Would she uncover her people's sins, or would she become yet another lost whisper, trapped in the shadows forever? The blinding light flickered violently, pulsating like a heartbeat, and shadows screamed, a cacophony that filled her ears, drowning out her thoughts. Sarah felt the swell of tears biting at her eyes, a mix of terror and overwhelmed confusion. The shadows hunched closer, their forms grotesque and distorted, reaching out as if to pull her into their abyss. Choose! The voices bellowed again, the timbre deepening, a menacing blend of urgency and threat. It was suffocating, all-consuming, as if the very air had thickened with sorrow and despair. She shut her eyes tight, fighting to quell the rising panic. What truth could possibly be worth this? Her heart raced, pounding insistently against her ribcage. Memories cascaded over her family's joyful suburban life punctuated by quiet dinners, the laughter of her siblings, her father's warm embrace. But those thoughts twisted into dark corners of her mind filled with sharp tension and shadows, reminding her of the fear she was always told to ignore, to forget. This wasn't just about her. It was about bloodlines woven with malevolence, a darkness too heavy to lift. Don't make us regret this! The shadows hissed, their voices now distinct, each filled with a dismal blend of dread and loss. They will come. They want what's theirs. She felt it again, heavy, creeping along her spine, the chill of realization. The family history that had stayed silent for years, the whispers she overheard, now swirled into a vortex of dread. A flicker of insight passed through her like a bolt of electricity. All this, the horror of the cellar, the dark shapes, the box itself, it was connected to her family. To her bloodline. Sarah, you have to stop this! Her father's voice echoed in her ears. She couldn't let that last piece of her father taint this moment. There was too much at stake. Her fear morphed into fury, and she shouted back, I need to know. I won't run anymore. The light flared brighter, illuminating the cellar even as shadows writhed. They twisted and recoiled as if burned, fighting against her will. The box kept pulsing, each thrum resonating with the shadows, and Sarah realized it wasn't just light, it was an invitation. An awakening. Listen to me! She shouted, directing her voice into the chaos. I need to know what you are hiding. Why is this happening? The shadows trembled, their rage curdling into a reluctant stillness. One stepped forward, an amorphous figure, almost human but warped and broken. You seek the truth, but can you bear its weight? It rasped, each word dripping with an ancient fear. I have to, she insisted. I can't be afraid anymore. The figure paused, and the whispers quieted, uncertainty seeping through their mass. Then you must confront the one they fear most. The one who binds the sins of the family. The air crackled with a new tension, thick with unease. As if her resolve catalyzed a moment of clarity, the shadows surged back in a wild, chaotic dance around her, pulsating in sync with the blood pounding in her ears. No! Not him, she breathed, comprehension dawning like a cold sweat running down her back. The truth was buried deep, tied to the dark legacy she never wanted to acknowledge. Now is the time, the voices taunted. Face him, or remain lost forever. A howl erupted from the depths of the cellar, a sound that chilled the very marrow in her bones. The certainty of dread settled over her like a shroud. What awaited her beneath layers of lies and regrets? The shadows shifted again, growing thick with desperation. She needed to know what family ties had shackled her existence. She had to find out. But at what cost? With a trembling hand, she pushed through the darkness and chose to confront the fear that had held her family prisoner for generations. Would the confrontation bring liberation or endless torment? Sarah's breath quickened as she prepared herself for the inevitable clash the keeper of the truth awaited. Would she be strong enough to handle it, or would she drown in the very legacy meant to bind her? And at that thought, just as the shadows began to form into a face she both revered and feared, the ground trembled violently beneath her. The cellar shook, reverberating with an ancient fury awakened by her decision. Are you ready to face the sins of your blood? The shadows twisted and churned as the ground quaked beneath her feet. Dust fell from the ceiling, igniting clouds in the thick air that pressed against her lungs. Sarah felt the weight of dread surging, crashing over her like a relentless tide. This was the moment, the reckoning she had called forth, and she stood at the epicenter of it all, trembling like a leaf in a storm. Who are you? She managed to stammer, voice thin against the haunting din. The figure's face took shape, contours sharpening into something almost familiar, yet grotesquely distorted, as if seen through a cracked mirror. Her breath hitched as recognition swept over her, a mixture of welcome warmth and bitter horror. It's him, she whispered, dread rippling through her. It's time to know, the figure uttered, its voice echoing with countless decades of pain. The truth held in secrecy will unveil the past. As those words washed over her, the shadows seemed to part, revealing glimpses of memories long entombed. Faint images flickered in the darkness, snapshots of a family distorted by anguish and regret. The faces were blurred, but the emotions, a chaotic web of fear, betrayal, and remorse, were palpable. Sarah's heart raced, her pulse quickening. No. Don't, she implored, hands shaking as she instinctively took a step back. But the shadows surged forward, crowded and insistent. They want to be seen, Sarah, they want you to remember. The figure rasped, reaching out, its hand a twisted mirror of her own. Suddenly, the memories struck her like a thunderclap. Her father's past, draped in silence, heavy with unspoken horrors. The late nights spent in hushed conversations, the way her mother would sometimes stare into the distance with a frozen expression. Events she had brushed aside as the rough edges of life suddenly sharpened into clarity. You're telling me you're him? She stammered, fear clenching her throat. Yes, the figure replied, sorrow mingling with ancient dread in its voice. I am the one they sent away, the one buried beneath the secrets that haunt us. Sarah felt heat rise in her chest. You're my father, but you're not. Confusion, anger, sorrow, each emotion collided within her, turning the ground beneath her feet to quicksand. He was afraid of what you'd find, the figure pressed, its eyes dark wells of knowledge. He buried the truth, but it has clawed its way back. A howl erupted again, piercing the silence as the shadows snarled with fury. It was not just her father's fear resonating, it was a specter of her family's sins. They were memories trapped in a cage of shame, desperate for release, but equally terrified of the consequences. Do you want to continue? The figure challenged, its voice a low growl, filled with ominous intent. The cost is high, and once you step into the light, there is no turning back. Dread coiled tighter around her, squeezing out any remnants of courage. What is the truth? She cried, desperation spilling from her lips. What must I sacrifice to unearth it? The shadows shrieked, a chorus of anguish mixed with rage, twisting violently around her. Face the darkness. They screamed collectively, and she could feel their hatred, their sorrow, pinning her where she stood. Do it, Sarah. It's time, her father's warped reflection urged, a tortured version of the man she loved. Sarah took a deep breath, grounding herself in that swirling tempest. A singular thought blared in her mind. She didn't choose this legacy. It swept over her like a storm, but she could no longer sit idle. She was here now, and she had to know. With one final step forward, the shadows shifted, darkened and morphed, melting into a swirling vortex that drew nearer. You want the truth? They howled. Embrace it then. Embrace the darkness, child of the cursed. Just as she felt herself being pulled into the maw of blackness, an ear-splitting crash echoed around her. Hold on. A different voice roared, cutting through the chaos. I'm here. Don't let them take you. Sarah felt a glimmer of hope cut through the horror. Who was that? There was a moment of blinding light, and on the other side, the darkness promised a truth she both feared and craved. Would that glimmer pull her free, or would it plunge her deeper into the curse of her lineage? She needed to hurry. The impending answer loomed, darker than the shadows. Light surged, blinding her momentarily, and Sarah stumbled back, gripping her temples as the world tilted. The shadows thinned, swirling around her like a dying storm. The voice continued to echo in the void. It was deep, familiar yet strange, shrouded in urgency. Sarah. The pain in the voice struck her heart harder than the shadows. You have to stay with me. Remember who you are. She blinked against the brightness, her surroundings coming into sharper focus. An arm shot forward, reaching for her, pulling her back from the clutches of darkness. It was Nick, her childhood friend, his face lined with worry. His blue eyes were wide, scanning her for any signs of life. Nick! She gasped, relief flooding her senses. But the shadows squirmed, clawing back at her, resistance growing in the air, a silent warning. They can't hold me back! She yelled defiantly, as if trying to convince not just Nick, but herself. I need to know! The atmosphere crackled with tension, the remnants of shadows still whispering around them. Nick shook his head. You don't understand. This isn't just about you. There are things here, things that could tear us apart. Stop. I need you to believe me. I'm close to uncovering something huge about my family. She pressed forward, gripping his arm tightly. I can't run from this anymore. I want tea. The tension thickened, almost tangible. Nick's expression shifted, a mix of fear and understanding. When we were kids, we heard the stories. But I never thought it was true, none of us did. The shadows roared angrily, twisting toward them. In a heartbeat, the ground trembled. Dust erupted, enveloping them in a choking cloud. Sarah's throat tightened as she yelled, What stories? What did you hear? He hesitated, eyes darting wildly, then spoke in a whisper, as if saying it aloud might summon the very horrors they'd feared. About the disappearances. The families that went missing, their ghosts wandering here, trapped. A chill gripped her spine. And my family? Nick's eyes went wide, panic etched across his features. They were among them, Sarah. Your mother, your father, people said they tried to uncover something, but it cost them everything. The ground quaked again, shadows howling hungrily. The air thickened, suffocating her thoughts. We have to leave. A voice piped in, urgent and demanding. But something deep inside her quaked at the thought. No! She shouted, voice sharp and unwavering. I can't leave without knowing what I'm tied to. I have to face this. The shadows retreated slightly, as if assessing her conviction. An eerie calm fell over them, the atmosphere still buzzing with untold secrets. Shadows flickered, dancing to an age-old rhythm of sorrow, and the fragments of her memories began to flood her mind. A family dinner, laughter that seemed muted, her mother's tear-streaked cheeks. Then she understood. It's not just about fear. It's about redemption, isn't it? She murmured, the truth crashing like waves over her. The door you open could change everything, Nick cautioned, urgency throbbing in his voice. But what if it brings them back? What if you're not the only one who will pay? Do you think I care? She cried, clenching her fists. It's time to bring closure to a vicious cycle. The shadows seemed to grow thicker, swirling angrily in response, the echoes of tormented wails increasing in intensity. The light behind her flickered uncertainly as if sensing her resolve. Deep within the swirling mass, a face emerged, a young girl, eyes wide with terror and longing. Sarah's breath caught in her chest. "Help me!" the girl cried, a whisper that pierced straight into her heart. "Who are you?" Sarah asked, stepping forward instinctively, driven by an unexplainable connection. Nick grasped her arm, panic igniting in his eyes. "Don't, Sarah. We don't know what they want." But it was too late. Sarah felt the pull of the girl's gaze, a haunting familiarity that invited her closer. The shadows thickened around them, forming a spiral of dark and dizzying energy. With each heartbeat, it beckoned her deeper into the past. "Hold on tight," Nick yelled, fear seeping into every syllable. But Sarah was entranced, suspended in that moment, the girl's presence becoming a lifeline. What if she is part of it all? What if she knows the truth? The shadows screamed in unison, a cacophony of despair unearthing buried emotions as Sarah took a step closer, lost in the gaze of the girl who might reveal everything she sought or lead her to unimaginable horror. Would this girl unlock the secrets of her family, or would she lead Sarah further down a path of darkness? As the shadows closed in, an icy grip fastened around her heart. The world warped around her as Sarah took that fateful step. Time twisted, stretching into an agonizing silence. The girl's eyes sparkled with something more than mere fear. It was longing, a desperate plea that tightened Sarah's chest with an ache she couldn't ignore. "Help me!" the girl cried again, her voice soft but urgent, slicing through the darkness. It held a weight that resonated within Sarah, like the echo of a forgotten memory. "Wait!" Nick's grip on her arm tightened, almost painfully, as he pulled at her. "You can't. We don't belong here. It isn't safe." But with the shadows swirling around them and the girl's haunting gaze drawing her in, Sarah felt the boundaries of her fear crack. "I have to know!" she shouted back, voice trembling as panic mixed with a strange exhilaration. "Something here calls to me." The ground convulsed beneath them, sending waves of heat and cold in quick succession. Shadows swirled angrily, snapping and swirling like angry serpents ready to bite. Soft whispers filled the air, a cacophony of lost souls echoing their stories of despair. "Sarah!" Nick's voice edged with panic. "You don't understand. We need to leave now." But Sarah couldn't turn away. The girl's mouth moved, forming words that seemed to transcend both time and language. "Help find them." The urgency in the girl's tone ignited something inside Sarah, a flicker of determination. "She's trapped like us. You can see that, Nick. We can't just abandon her." Suddenly, the shadows unleashed a violent shriek, echoing a wail of torment that rattled the very foundation of their reality. A terrifying rush of despair washed over Sarah as the shadows began to coalesce into darker forms, morphing into specters that danced around them, taunting with fragmented faces of the past. Nick's face reflected sheer terror as he pulled Sarah back. "Please! They're angry, they can sense what you're doing. We must run!" But something snapped within her. The girl, the embodiment of her fears, was hidden under layers of shadows, and Sarah felt an unbreakable bond pulling her toward that lost soul. She took another step forward, her heart racing with both dread and purpose. "You don't get it. This could be the only chance to save her." The shadows writhed and convulsed, reacting violently to her defiance. "Tell me!" Sarah yelled, voice trembling but resolute. "What do you need from me?" The girl's expression softened momentarily, a flicker of hope sparking in her eyes. "You must remember them, find them before it's too late." A shockwave ripped through the ground beneath them, sending both Sarah and Nick sprawling. The whispers intensified into a frenzied roar of anguished souls, each one a tether to the past Sarah was desperate to uncover. Memories flickered like old film reels, faces of her parents, the warmth of family gatherings, the laughter fading into an eerie silence. "Sarah!" Nick screamed, pushing against the force of the shadows that threatened to engulf them. "This isn't worth it. Whatever you find could destroy us." "Shut up. You don't understand." She could barely hear herself over the chaos. "It's time for the truth." The shadows surged, pushing forth a knot of pure darkness. From within it, distorted faces twisted in and out of existence, faces she almost recognized. The girl's cry grew louder, severing through enticing whispers of long-buried secrets. "Find us!" As Sarah lunged toward the girl, tendrils of darkness lashed out, wrapping around her wrists like icy chains. Each pulse of fear sent a chill through her, straining her resolve. She felt Nick's hands slip from her grip, his voice fading into the tempest of whispers. "Don't! Sarah!" The last echo of his voice vanished as the shadows dissolved into blinding white light. In an instant, Sarah was standing alone, the girl now before her, smile radiant yet tinged with desperation. Around them, emptiness yawned like an abyss, and the echoes of spirits whispered promises of revelation. It was now or never. She had to grasp the truth before time slipped away forever. "Who are they?" she demanded, heart pounding in her chest. "What happened to my family?" The girl stepped closer, her eyes wide and pleading, the shadows swirling behind her like a storm ready to erupt. "You must choose, Sarah. Only together can we uncover the truth, or you may become one of us forever. Will you risk it?" Every heartbeat echoed with the weight of her choice as shadows shifted ominously around her, marking the line between salvation and doom. What truth lay in store, and at what cost would it come? In that moment, one question loomed larger than all: was the darkness beyond worth the secrets it guarded? Sarah stood there, frozen, the air thick with unspoken dread. The girl's eyes bored into her, a mixture of hope and something darker, like deep waters concealing unspeakable things beneath their surface. The shadows hovered around them, weaving in and out, forming shapes that whispered her name. "Choose," the girl urged, her voice barely a whisper, yet it resonated with a force that wrapped itself around Sarah's mind. The weight of the decision felt crushing. Could she really trust this girl? Was this a trick? Every instinct told her to run, to escape the consuming darkness that encircled her. But the memory of her family, of their laughter once echoing through the halls of their home, fueled her determination. "I'll help," Sarah breathed, her voice barely escaping her throat, yet sounding loud in the silence. "But I need to know the truth, it's all I have left." The girl's smile widened, though it seemed tinged with sadness. "We're bound together now, forever. But be warned, not all truths are easy to carry." The shadows surged around her, dancing violently. Sarah felt herself being pulled closer, deeper into the void that threatened to consume everything she was. Suddenly, she was standing at the brink of an abyss, swirling shadows coiling around her ankles like serpents. "Look!" the girl commanded, pointing into the swirling shadows. Images began to form, hazy at first, then sharpening into vivid scenes. Flickers of a house, a garden, children playing her childhood, entwined with chilling moments she barely remembered. Visions flashed, her mother's warm embrace, her father's laughter, then blood, so much blood. An echoing shout rang through the air, growing into a deafening scream. "Sarah!" The girl's voice replaced the din. "You cannot look away. You must see them. Understand what happened." Sarah fought against the terror rising in her throat. She clutched her head as memories surged forth: a black car, an argument, shadows in the night. Everything felt too overwhelming, each moment cutting deeper like shards of glass. A figure loomed over her, tall, cloaked in darkness. His face was obscured, but the feeling of dread was familiar. That shape was the embodiment of fear itself, suffocating and relentless. "Find us!" the girl screamed again, urgency thickening the air. "Only then will you be free." As if on cue, The icy tendrils of darkness tightened around Sarah, pulling at her resolve. Flickers of light caught her attention. Images were emerging, but the faces were distorted, unfamiliar. She screamed, "Stop! Show me my family!" For an instant, the chaos ceased. Shadows hung in the air like a heavy silence, deathly still. Then, one by one, the faces materialized before her. Some she knew, others were strangers, but all bore the same look of despair. "Help us," they all seemed to plead, their eyes shimmering with fear. The girl's voice broke the trance. "They are trapped like us. But we can save them, together." Panic coursed through Sarah's veins. "But how? What do I have to do?" "It's your bond with them, Sarah. Only through your love can they escape. It's the truth that ties your fates. I can unlock it, but you must be willing to sacrifice. Are you prepared to give everything?" The shadows roared, and Sarah could feel their hunger. They ached to pull her into their embrace, to devour her completely. The sensation was intoxicating, tempting her surrender. "My family," Sarah whispered, desperation flooding her. The stakes were beyond comprehension, but she couldn't lose them again. "I'll do it! I will!" Suddenly, the girl's face transformed into the very essence of terror. "Then brace yourself, Sarah, for the truth will shatter all that you know." In that moment, as shadows erupted into chaotic currents of rage, a bone-chilling scream erupted from the depths, reverberating within their eerie sanctum. It was a voice she recognized, a voice she both loved and feared. Sarah held me. A shiver ran down her spine, anchoring her to the torment. It wasn't just a plea. It was the reckoning, a call that drew her closer to the precipice of truth. A decision loomed: take the final step, or lose her family forever. The darkness beckoned. Which path would she choose? The air crackled with tension, thick with a mix of terror and hope. Sarah felt the weight of the abyss pulling at her, but the voice, her father's voice, pierced through the chaos, urging her to act. She knew she stood on the brink of something monumental. "I will find you!" she cried out, and the shadows howled in response, a chilling chorus of lost souls echoing her resolve. With her heart pounding, she faced the swirling mass of shadows and the girl who had ignited her determination. "We can save them!" The girl nodded, her eyes reflecting a blend of anguish and strength that mirrored Sarah's own. "Then hold on tightly," the girl whispered, reaching for Sarah's hand. "Together, we will break the curse." As their hands clasped, a surge of energy coursed through Sarah, igniting an inner fire that lit the darkness surrounding them. Memories whirled around her: her mother's loving embrace, warm family dinners, laughter fading into silence interspersed with horrifying glimpses of that terrible night when everything had unraveled. They all collided within her, each a testament to the legacies of pain and love intertwined. "Let it in, Sarah," the girl urged, her voice trembling with urgency. "You must face the truth. Only together can you release them." With every heartbeat, Sarah felt the shadows tense, their restless whispers pulling at her limbs. She squeezed the girl's hand, summoning every ounce of bravery. "I'm ready," she declared, voice brazen, piercing even the clamoring shadows, and suddenly, clarity washed over her, like sunlight breaking through heavy clouds. Images began to crystallize in front of her. Propelled by the merging of her love and her willingness to confront the past, a bright light shattered the suffocating darkness. It flowed from her heart, illuminating the contours of the shadows, presenting a vivid tableau of her family's sorrow. She could finally see them, her parents, her siblings caught in that never-ending cycle. "You have to choose," the girl urged, her voice unwavering yet tentative. "Do you want to save them?" Tears streamed down Sarah's cheeks as she nodded, every part of her aching to save the souls of those she loved. Yes. She could feel the weight of her family's torment anchoring her, grounding her urgency. It was her time to rewrite their story. The shadows recoiled, yet the light burgeoned, colliding with them in a collision of raw energy. Ghostly figures reached for Sarah, their expressions twisting between fear and hope. "Help us," they whispered in unison, their voices fragile and trembling. "Listen to me," Sarah cried, her heart brimming. "You are not lost, you're just trapped. I can help you move forward." With those words, her love pure and unyielding wrapped around her family, guiding them to sunlight they had long been denied. The darkness fought back, howling in agony, but Sarah held firm, bolstered by the girl at her side. "We can do this together!" she shouted. A brilliant light erupted, blinding in its power, and Sarah felt herself lifted by something greater than fears. It burst forth, tearing through the shadows until they fragmented like broken glass. The spirits of her family surged, their faces brightening with a recognition that washed over her like a sea of warmth. "I love you!" Sarah screamed, her voice sounding like a bell, echoing through the darkness. "You will be free!" Then, with one final surge, she hacked through the chains binding her family. There was a deafening roar as shadows disintegrated, spiraling apart until silence took hold, a stillness resting like a soft blanket over the chaos. Gasping, Sarah felt a weight lift off her. Her family stood before her, radiant and whole, no longer bound by the anguish of the past. Each of their faces shone with gratitude, purging the shadows of fear that had long gripped their lives. The girl smiled, tears of relief pooling at the corners of her eyes. "You did it!" she breathed, releasing Sarah's hand, a tangible sign of their bond. But as shadows faded, Sarah looked around at the cellar, its emptiness devoid of the horrors that had once plagued her. The whispers receded, leaving her with a profound sense of peace. She had faced the darkness, unearthing buried truths, and although it had been terrifying, the victory was palpable. "Thank you," she said softly to the girl, now dissolving like mist in the night. "What will happen to you?" "I will remain a part of this truth, forever," the girl replied with a radiant smile. "You were the key. And now your family can finally rest." The world around Sarah began to coalesce, a new beginning taking shape. A garden filled with light bloomed around her, patches of color breaking the eternal gloom. Together, her family echoed, a united front, their faces all aglow with hope. They embraced her, their warmth sealing the bond of affection that had withstood centuries of despair. Sarah stood resolute, knowing she would carry their legacy forward, this time one of love, courage, and healing. The shadows would always linger in the corners of her heart, but would no longer haunt her. "Let us go home," she said, her voice steady and laced with promise. Each step forward echoed with potential, the heaviness of the past slowly lifting as the dawn broke over the horizon of their reclaimed lives. And as they ventured out of the cellar, Sarah was enveloped in the warmth of familial love. This was the end of one chapter, but it was only the beginning of a new story of light, of healing, and of family reunited. So stay tuned, because there's always more to uncover. Don't miss a beat. You need to subscribe now to catch the next exclusive story. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help us grow. And hey, flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about what just went down. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You have the power to keep these stories alive. Let's do this together.